None of it is cool. But you sound really beautiful. It's fantastic. Great. So, you're doing really well. There's a lot of really clear things. I'm going to mention primarily one thing, which is that the most important thing that we do as conductors is to anticipate what's going to happen next. And sometimes you do that, but sometimes you think that if you make the gesture when they play, that's good. But it's actually always before. So what they always, for example, if you do those pizzicati at the very end of either phrase, in here you tend to go, and in a funny way that doesn't really help them, right? Because they want right? They just need the pickup, always, right? And you know that. But so one of the most extraordinary things is to figure out as a conductor when they don't need you at all. And that's so important for two reasons. One, it shows trust in the orchestra, but also it makes it much more significant when then you do something. Okay? Now, so let's think about that a little bit, and the other thing I want to then talk about is how to show a little bit more the shapes of the phrases more consistently, rather than just the character of the articulations, because we can certainly do both. We're lucky enough to have two hands, right? So, first of all, we'll think a little bit more about this. So from the very opening, can we
in the very opening for a moment.
So we know we need to and. Shapes of the phrases that you want, because they can play it now. Right? Yeah. Good. Good. There's a basic thing that I think is important as far as I'm concerned. I feel like I'm about to play that. What's your instrument?
Viola.
Very good. Okay. So, you know, have you ever played quartets? Of course you have. Right? So when, and of course I know I'm particularly addicted to that because that's what I did for the first 14 years of my career. But you know, for me, sometimes conductors look at you a little bit aloof and they kind of go, okay, play it. You know? But actually, if you have your instrument in your hand, you play with it, you go and, but you invite much more, right? So we should, as a conductor, I think we should, as if we're playing, pretty much. So now pretend to play. And now look at that. Good, yeah. And make sure you don't get too what you did there is that you did a funny thing. Yeah, there was. I have to tell you, this is one of the most exciting experiences I ever had as a student. I was 20 years old. I was at Juilliard, and I was told that Herbert Montarian was coming to give masterclasses in conducting, and I was leading the orchestra, and I felt so terrible for these conductors because I knew it was going to be hell for them. And sure enough, this guy walks in, like quite a bit shorter than me, and 100 times more powerful. And he sat right there. And the first conductor is now a very famous conductor, Myung-Han, but he was very young then. And he had this terrible habit back then of doing this. Right? And we all went, what are you doing? I mean, you know, it really doesn't help us much if we see a few shakes, right? But anyway, we were playing Don Juan. Okay, you will play Don Juan, probably. It starts. Right. All right. So, and the beginning was just, you know, try to play it to that. You know, you can imagine what it was like. Anyway, so poor Myung-Han had to play, had to rehearse us. That's the first note. And it took him so long just to be able to make us to do that. Finally, he had to realize that you and bum bum. That's what you have to do. They were very clear. Now, this is a different kind of beginning, but if we don't give the and just it's absolute definite what we're doing. Okay, so that's exactly what it's doing. Why do you give us Forzando when they're already playing? They can't follow you once they're playing, right? If you really want to give us Forzando, you have to give and right? Because I give but You see what I mean? Yeah. Good. You don't have to give too much. Little. Don't lose your pulse because they're wondering, oh, were we in the right tempo or not? Yeah? But you don't even need to give the second bar much. You just, because the less you give, the more you'll get a good minuet. Make sure you're not behind the orchestra. Little ahead. Any of our generations, because I had LPs and then cassettes, and you have YouTube or whatever you use, you know. Yeah. But the problem is that we have to make sure that we don't look as if we've been conducting a recording for a long time, which plays no matter what, right? You know, so that's something that. So you have really good instincts as a conductor, but sometimes you get a little behind. You just like let them go. And so, for example, this Forzando. If you make that gesture. If you make it's again too late. So they feel you. In a way, we're like a tugboat. You know, a little bit. Right? Let's take it one more time. Let's just stay. So you're totally in conviction with what you want. Forget about the fact that I'm here. Okay, here we go. actually what the Germans call schlepp, schleppen, drag, we drag a little bit, and they want to feel the phrase going through a little bit, right? So when you get to that phrase you just covered, by the way, that was just great, right? All right, let's take from for the moment, yeah. Take from letter A. Letter A is good, yeah. It was very subtle. I was like, oh, that was very private. Nothing sure you could. It's like the moment before is when we have to put, there's a connection between us, right? Yes, good. So you've got then you can just go here, left hand on, right hand. So you layer, everybody know, oh yeah, that's my context, that's my context. Okay? We'll try that. We're taking right at what, 21, okay? Is it okay? Is it okay? Good. Try it. Right. Okay, good, very good. You did it, but you did it with some hesitation. So let me just show you two things, the way it happens. Let's play with the same place, and I'll kind of show you what I think you did more as you went and go. Every time they play it better, and they don't want to play badly when I'm here, which is very sweet. But so let's do it one more time, and I'll show you just a little bit more the anticipation. Feel the way the time goes. One more time, please. And the one thing that you also get used to when you get early is that you really use their ears. Yeah. You're still playing with that, no matter what the conductor does. Because you get used to when you play in a professional orchestra or even in other things, you get used to the idea that the conductor's not going to do that. Yeah. Let's do it one more time. And. Didn't get the finish, right? Yeah? So let's now do it with you. I'm going to start you and I'm going to let you play. And. Yeah. What I was saying, when you stop conducting, there's no choice but listening, right? Sometimes that's a good choice. The best they played it yet was when neither of us was conducting. No need for it. Okay? Same place? Same place. You've got a nice singing line that you want to have. So you have right? Just it's when you move your left hand to get that phrase out. So what you tend to do is you use the same hand. So and then so this hand has just done one thing that is quite separate from this. Separate your hands up a little bit more. Yeah? And this becomes just the pulse. Let's do the last phrase from the sforzando at this is the Kennison. 29, please. 29. Yeah. actually is in a way even more important. And that is, I will ask you a question. What are we really achieving from the podium? What is our function, most important function, do you think? And let's not talk about just like beating time. Yeah. Okay, so.
Interpretation?
Yeah. You've played in an orchestra a lot, right? Yeah. So, yes, interpretation, but...
Well, more so than interpretation, I believe inspiring the musicians.
Very good.
Not only to play, not necessarily for you or the audience, but for each other.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's very good. So, I think that sometimes it requires a lot of time on the podium to be able to unravel all of the concerns about timing. Do I remember the score? Do I this and that? What do I do with each hand? And pulse and all these kinds of entrances to try to then relinquish all of those thoughts and say, how do I feel? Now, when you watch conductors you love, you always know what they want, right? Somehow. The ultimate example, of course, is Bernstein, right? Where it was so obvious, it was sometimes even embarrassing, but one of the great geniuses who ever lived. I mean, it's just amazing to watch that. And then there are people who are much more subtle about it, like Abado, but you always know, nevertheless, what they want. So, in some ways, it's annoying, just like everything else, we have to play scales and we have to play thirds and sixths and even fifths. And by the way, practice your fourths. If there's anything that makes you play in tune, it's practicing your fourths. But, and conductors have to do that too. But yet we have to always at the same time figure out how we're going to really play convincing phrases. So when you stand on a podium, I mean, isn't this just the most beautiful thing we're just doing, right? You can never hide how much you love it. That sounds like such an obvious statement, but if we don't just show how much we love the music at that moment, we can't really expect them to do it, right? They can, but it's so it's our job in a way to bring everyone together, to unify the expression, right? You're a very sensitive musician, I can tell that. So now, now that we've done some work on the technique, we can go back to that a little bit later if you like, but let's really think about what each character has. But pianissimo espressivo, that's a very special thing, isn't it? Have we had a pianissimo yet? Just that one, maybe? Here, with a completely different character, but no. But this espressivo is very special. So why don't we play a few bars before, and then I'm going to leave you for a while. Go to the end of the movement.
Can we take it from B, please? B.
thing to learn how to conduct because you can never practice in private. You know, you can do whatever you can do at home, but the only time you have an instrument in your hands is when everyone's staring at you and playing. Right? So let's talk about one of the how we have two conductors, right?
Yeah. So we just have a couple of minutes.
Okay, good. So what I'd like to talk about is you developing courage and how to use your left hand to really shape phrases and to hold, especially during these little solos, right? That we want to encourage it. Can we play 2 bars before D? Let me just try for a second. We'll just try to use my left hand in a very different way. Okay? 2 bars before letter D, okay? And yeah, okay, good. Here we go. And it's very understandable when you're early stages of conducting. People always move their hands too fast when they're trying to do a phrase. You go, what happened to that? And they're all looking for it. Well, I saw his left hand and now it's gone, right? So just try this phrase a little bit, and it doesn't matter whether you go the phrase this way, feel it. And you can practice, this is one of the things you really can, that's technical practice. You know, you can practice at home, you can practice just conducting in 4 and making a crescendo through 3 or 4 bars, and really feel that crescendo and expand your body, and then make a diminuendo, yeah, and feel everything calming down. It's really, like, literally, that's a physical technique. Okay, we're going to try this passage. Same thing, 2 before D. 2 before D. Exactly, yeah. So, but just try once at letter D, and don't even use, put your right hand down here. Okay? Okay, so here we go, letter D. Well, I'll show you once. Letter D, and letter D, directly at letter D. And we don't actually, I mean, you'll be able to learn how to keep this kind of thing. Now they just need to, so I'd ask you to try just showing a long phrase with your left hand. Okay? And one of them has to do with just figuring out how to be able to do this and do whatever you want to do with your left hand. Shape, for the longest period of time. Yeah? Because then you'll find yourself being able to make. So anticipation, really important. That you always prepare the beat before with what is going to happen on the next beat, and then showing the phrases. Feel very free. Terrific.